And Real Madrid have won their third consecutive UEFA Champions League.
This Real Madrid team are unstoppable in the Champions League.
Winning one Champions League is tough. Winning two is even harder. 3 in a row? Relax, buddy. Countless clubs have stood witness to the most iconic anthem in the history of organized football. Countless teams have given absolutely everything to reach euphoria by the time it's all over. And countless teams have failed to even come close. But there is one team that absolutely cannot relate to what I just said. A team that wins this competition so often that it's a wonder that they haven't named the trophy after them yet. Real Madrid are so good in Europe that it really makes you wonder how they keep it up. Regardless of personnel, this team manages to regularly find ways to exceed our expectations. At 14 wins in total, Los Blancos have won double the amount of trophies that the team with the second most has, Milan, with 7. And you can pretty much bet they'll be adding to that tally in the future. As of 2022, this team has won 5 titles in a 9-year period, which is wild. However, there are 3 titles between 2016 and 2018 in particular that we're going to be looking back on today. A Zizou masterclass that cemented his legacy as untouchable both on and off the pitch, a CR7 demolition that cemented him as the greatest Champions League player ever, and a team effort that is hard to imagine will be replicated anytime soon. Today, we look back at how Zinedine Zidane made Real Madrid the most royal of them all. Yo, what's going on everyone? Really hope you're all doing well. I'm Tinashe and welcome back to the channel. This is a story of the pinnacle of greatness. It's also one that I think I'm gonna look back on every so often and just think, I was really alive to watch this all happen, huh? We've got a lot to cover today, but before we get ahead of ourselves, we gotta talk about the hangover of La Decima. We must start again from zero. Carlo Ancelotti said this after a poor start to the 14-15 season. The sales of Angel Di Maria and Xabi Alonso, 2 key figures, were singled out as major contributors to this quote and the bad start. After over a decade of failing to advance past the semis, Real Madrid finally managed to win their 10th Champions League in 2014. La Decima was a momentous occasion, truly one for the ages. Naturally, it was assumed that this win would kickstart world domination. It did not. At least, not right away. Which, even as I was typing this, sounds like absolute rubbish. Yes, Madrid had a poor start, but they finished with 92 points in the league, only 2 behind first place Barca. They were narrowly knocked out of the UCL in the semis, and Cristiano Ronaldo had his best scoring season ever with 61 in all competitions. Apart from that, between 13 September 2014 and 4 December 2015, they played 22 games and won every single one. All the same, what you have to understand about a team like Real Madrid is that they have impossibly high standards. They are impatient and, quite frankly, often fickle. Cristiano Ronaldo, Zinedine Zidane, Alfredo Di Stefano even. They've all been booed by supporters that expect nothing else but perfection. Of course, Barcelona winning the treble that year didn't help the situation. To a lot of people, this season was a complete failure. If you need further proof, Carlo Ancelotti was sacked straight after. Rafa Benitez, who replaced Ancelotti, wasn't exactly the replacement Madrid were after. While he did top his UCL group and boasted an 11-4-3 record, his Madrid was sat in 3rd in the league by the time his time was up. Also, he played Denis Cheryshev in the Copa del Rey even though he was ineligible due to card accumulation and got Madrid disqualified. Honestly, this probably wasn't even his fault, but it's still a funny story. Change was needed. Luckily for Madrid, they didn't have to look too far. As a player, Zinedine Zidane was a legend, as we all already know. To this day, he is regarded by many as not only the greatest European player ever, but he's in the running for the GOAT to some. When it comes to Real Madrid, the term legend is apt. Spending 20 years in Madrid has been the most beautiful thing that's happened to me in my life. A quote from Zidane from 2021. I think the feeling is mutual. As is the case for several former players, management called out to him And he answered. In 2010, he returned to Los Blancos to begin this journey, and his first assignment was as a special advisor to Florentino Perez and Jose Mourinho. And guys, I'm gonna level with you, not entirely sure what that is. There is a lot of technical jargon mumbo-jumbo online about what his role actually was here, but very little in terms of an actual description. Regardless, he must have done pretty well in that role because a year later, he was named as Real Madrid's sporting director. This was after former director Jorge Valdano was sacked when it was rumored that him and Jose Mourinho had fallen out. Never changed, Jose. Never change. 2 years after that, he became an assistant coach to Carlo Ancelotti. He was in the dugout as the team won La Decima. His progression into this new world saw him then move on to managing Real Madrid's B side. All well and good, but at the same time, there was a rather large issue. The man didn't have his coaching badges, which, from what I've heard, are quite important in this line of work. This even led to him being banned from coaching for a few months, as Madrid were hoping to pull a sneaky on everyone. He did receive the full qualification in 2015 though, which makes what he would go on to achieve as a manager all the more impressive. Which brings us to 2016. The big job. When Zidane took over at the 15-16 midway point, many were confused. A man that had just earned his coaching badges and had zero experience at the top level, let alone at the biggest club in the world. How could Perez think this was a good idea? It may sound funny, but for some reason, there is still a widespread belief that this decision was not a calculated and smart one by Perez and the higher-ups. That they hadn't taken into consideration that Zidane had been impressing with the B side, attending Pep Guardiola's training sessions with Bayern Munich, seminars with Marcelo Bielsa and Marseille, being right by Carlo Ancelotti's side as he won the Champions League, or working hard towards his training badges. To this very day, for some unknown reason, there is still a widespread belief that Zinedine Zidane's entire coaching career boils down to one thing and one thing only: luck. We're gonna spend the rest of the video talking about why that is bullshit, and why you should be ashamed of yourself if you think that. When Zidane took over from Benitez, the team wasn't in the best of shape. They were trailing both Atletico and Barcelona in the league, and although the new-look management was showing encouraging signs, the gap in the league grew larger by the day. By February, they were 12 points off the top, and the league looked to be wrapped up. That was until Madrid went on a 12-game win streak, closing the gap to 1 point by the time the season was over. Doesn't get much closer than that. A remarkable turnaround. Yes. A fluke? No. There are several things that made Zidane work as a manager. Of course, there was the fact that he's one of the greatest ever. That alone will earn you the instant respect and admiration of every professional footballer. While Zidane was often the best on the pitch, he was known to get the best out of his teammates around him as a player, recognizing what each player did best and doing whatever was possible to ensure that those qualities were allowed to be on full display is something that he'd been doing his whole life by this point. As a playmaker, vision is something that has to come naturally to you. So, despite the fact that he was already inheriting a Champions League winning side, what he did for the team ensured that the success continued. The first tenet came from fitness being equated to confidence. Not once did you ever see a Zidane Madrid player gas out, even in extra time. And they went to extra time a lot. Madrid were somewhat of a hybrid of a possession-based side spliced with a counter-attacking team. So when they lost the ball, it was important that the opposition were overwhelmed regardless of the form of transition. For the most part, this was achieved in a 4-3-3 early in Zidane's tenure. Starting from defense, both Dani Carvajal and Marcelo were players with extremely high attacking work rates. In Marcelo's case, it's a wonder why he was even put in the back line on paper. Guy spent as much time in the opposition's half as the opposition's defenders. These two were extremely good at knowing when to overlap, underlap, hang back, play the early ball, or drive to the byline. And they honestly needed to be, as their wide partners in Cristiano Ronaldo and Gareth Bale were really unpredictable in their movements in the final third. It's tough to call having these two in their prime in the same team fair, because it wasn't. On one hand, you have Ronaldo, who practically had no weaknesses in attack and was able to finish, get past defenders, and deliver a final ball in every possible way. Then, on the other hand, you have Gareth Bale, who had Olympic-level pace, was more of a traditional wide man, but could still do just about everything I just said Ronaldo could, albeit with a less versatile, weaker foot. As Bale was constantly injured, and also because the team needed some unpredictability, Isco would play just about everywhere in the attacking line, often in place of Bale. He also played because he was phenomenal back then. Not as quick as the others, but still with a lot to offer. We'll talk more on him a bit later. Benzema gets his praise now, but back then he was the often misunderstood glue that held everything together. People forget that this man was tipped to be the best striker in the world when he moved from Lyon. It took a little longer than expected, but this ultimately came true. Instead, at the start of his Madrid career, he took a reserved role, dropping deep and vacating spaces to allow his wide men to shine. With no Benzema, there is no record breaker Ronaldo. When he would drop deep, it was mostly to add numbers to the midfield alongside Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, and Casemiro. The title of greatest midfield of the 2010s is usually given to Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets, and I'm not here to debate it, but this Madrid three have just as much of a claim in my eyes. With Casemiro the furthest back, no one was getting past him. Modric was box to box, Kroos would hold and often drop deep to form a pivot with Casemiro, all were defensively and offensively adept. Sergio Ramos and Pepe were the central defensive pairing, both of them strong and crazy, so good luck getting past them. Ramos in particular is maybe the best ball-playing centre-back as well as the best ball-carrying centre-back of his generation. Probably the best goal-scoring centre-back too. He allowed the team to push forward without having to worry about any unexpected turnovers. And even though he likely drives automatic, I have it on good authority that his clutch control is superb. Keylor Navas was the long-term successor to Iker Casillas in goals. However, while the latter is a legend, Navas might be one of the most underrated goalkeepers in history. This man was not a superstar by any means, but he was always reliable in goals, had the reflexes of a cat, and rarely made egregious errors. Looking back at this team today, it's safe to say that greatness was pretty much inevitable. Thanks to the poor showing at the beginning of the season, the 15-16 Champions League was not expected to be a victorious one at all for Madrid. And by the time the quarterfinals came around, it was more or less expected that they were on course for an exit. They breezed through the stages prior, but a 2-0 loss in the quarterfinals first leg against Wolfsburg put everything at risk. In stepped Cristiano Ronaldo. Second leg, Bernabeu, hat-trick. The man was really an unstoppable force not too long ago, so much so that he scored 16 goals in that year's competition, an amount that, while crazy, would be even more crazy if he hadn't scored 17 in the 13-14 edition, the highest goal tally of any singular Champions League campaign. In fact, Ronaldo holds the top 3 spots for most goals in a single UCL campaign. Did I hear anyone say Mr. Champions League? After Man City did a Man City, it was Atletico Madrid that were yet again standing in Real's way in the final, a repeat of the 2014 final. Atletico unfortunately just could not handle the pressure, and Real did them over yet again, on penalties this time. In Zidane's first season as a first-team manager, he took a team that a lot of people had completely lost faith in to the promised land. It was unbelievable, and he was far from finished. In his first full season in charge in 16-17, it was expected that this Madrid side would be even stronger. For most people, expectations create pressure that is insurmountable. Not for these guys. And for the record, looking back, this is the season that showed that it really wasn't just dumb luck. While the core of the team remained fit and ready to go on, several injuries and niggling grievances caused enough disruptions to make Zidane have to really think things through. The most significant change came due to Zidane's increased distrust in Gareth Bale's fitness. That, along with his reliance on the output of Ronaldo and Benzema, both players that were racking up minutes and also getting up there in age, meant that rotations were necessary, and that they needed to be done right. The so-called B team, consisting of players such as Lucas Vazquez, Alvaro Morata, James Rodriguez, Marco Asensio, Mateo Kovacic, and more, all stepped up when needed. Because the squad was able to stay fresh all year, the league title was theirs. For the important matches, especially the ones in Europe, the main guys were always fit and ready. And again, while the team was stellar on all fronts, it was the Ronaldo show once more. 10 goals in the knockout stages of the competition. 10. In a winning UCL run, you only play 7 knockout matches, and these matches were played against Napoli, Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, and Juventus of all teams, with hat-tricks and braces in each game he scored. I will admit, VAR would have likely been put to good use in some of these matches, especially against Bayern, but hey. What can we do now? The 2017 UCL final and how things were set up here is perhaps one of the main indicators of Zidane's prowess as a tactician. Madrid's starting lineup was identical to their setup from the previous year, with the exception of Isco coming in for Bale and Varane coming in for Pepe. Never change a winning team. Zidane. And most other people who have winning teams at their disposal. Instead of lung-bursting wide play, Isco would drift in and add to the midfield. Benzema would then do so less often. Isco would actually drift across the entire pitch, leaving Carvajal to provide the bulk of the width on the right side. Therefore, most of the attack went down the left. In the final itself, Juventus had Madrid's number for large portions of the game, blocking all their wide play, forcing them central. The first half ended 1-1, and it wasn't the greatest half by Los Blancos. Noticing the issue, Zidane had his team pack the midfield in possession in a 3-4-3 of sorts. The result was a destabilized Juventus and 3 goals in 29 minutes to make it 4-1. Madrid were 2 for 2. Season number 3. By this point, no other manager in the history of the competition had won the modern Champions League 3 times in a row. Mostly because, what the fuck? That's ridiculous. And to that point, the 17-18 campaign was by far the toughest run out of any of the runs that we've spoken about so far, in terms of quality of opposition at the very least. You would think that the team was well on its way to falling off after such a long stretch of dominance. After all, there was a drop-off in the league as they finished 3rd, 17 points off of champions Barcelona. Yet, in Europe, they faced off against PSG, the champions of France, Juventus, the champions of Italy, Bayern Munich, the champions of Germany, and Liverpool, who were building up to being something truly special, even going on to win the whole thing in the following year. Real Madrid rolled through all of them. It was a campaign filled with comebacks, going down and overturning deficits against PSG and Bayern Munich. They almost had their 3-0 lead stripped away by Juventus in the second leg of that tie. If not for a 97th minute Ronaldo pen in that match, Juventus would have completed a miraculous redemption. Coincidentally, it was a campaign that had 2 of the greatest overhead kicks in Champions League history. Ronaldo had the entire Juventus crowd at the Allianz giving him a standing ovation for his. Just look at how high his foot is. This is not normal. Bale came off the bench and had the entire world in shock due to how insane his was, and it was in the final of all matches. Can anyone else remind me why neither of these goals won the Puskás? It's been almost 5 years. And I'm still upset. Once again, the exact same starting lineup from the year before was used here. Only difference was that Isco's central free roam role was made more official as per the team sheet. The philosophy remained the same. High pressure, quick interplay through the flanks and back inside, deadly counters, and then there was that magic factor that simply can't be coached. 3 in a row. Now that is a headline. Like I said earlier on, a lot of people were initially expecting this Madrid side to crash and burn under Zidane. And then, when the opposite happened, they expected the high to be short-lived. Neither of those things happened. All the same, we all knew that this was going to have to come to an end at some point. And funnily enough, it happened mere minutes after Madrid's name was etched onto the trophy. Cristiano Ronaldo's post-match interview was riddled with hints that he was leaving. He's on record saying it's because he felt Madrid didn't value him as he felt they should. There are other rumors, but you can make of those what you will. Subsequently, every other post-match interview involved asking his teammates what they knew. Gareth Bale, who felt that he should have started that match, and also many of the others before that, let that be known, and also hinted at leaving. Perez was dismissive of any and all Ronaldo leaving talk. He has been happy, is currently happy, and will continue to be happy. He's under contract. I'm not here to speak about individual players. All of a sudden, the fact that they won a European Cup was a secondary, even tertiary headline. Contrary to what Perez had to say, Ronaldo did leave shortly after, but more significantly, days after the big win, Zidane announced his resignation as manager. Guy literally showed up, won everything, refused to elaborate further, and left. I mean, he did say that Madrid required change, but that can mean anything, right? Also, I guess change wasn't actually what was required, as he was back only 10 months later. But that's a whole other can of worms. Going back to this incredible 3-year run, this team was remarkable. They had everything: hard work, luck, the right personnel, and that right there probably best sums up this era and what ultimately made this team the greatest team in modern European Cup history. A club hierarchy that knew how to market their players while keeping the quality of ballers at its absolute peak. Stellar footballing ability from phenomenal, mentally strong players, a highly intelligent manager who clearly did not give a shit about being underestimated while wiping the floor with an entire continent. I guess there really is no argument against the fact that Real Madrid are the undisputed kings of Europe. And there we have it. Let me know what you guys think about this insane Madrid team. Feel free to follow all the socials. That's all for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I will catch you in the next one.